Houston's a very real possibility for Philadelphia's James Harden. Upwards of $60 million in cap space. If they win the lottery tomorrow night here in Chicago, and they're the ones who can draft Victor Wembanyama, that would not necessarily change the Rockets' intentions to pursue James Harden.
This is the fourth day in a row where we're making a video on the Philadelphia 76ers or James Harden. And I want to ask forgiveness from Miami Heat fans because you guys definitely deserve a video as a result of the craziness that's coming to you guys in the middle of the NBA playoffs. But it seems like what they're saying about this offseason is true. We're about to see unprecedented star movement in this offseason, and it's already beginning because James Harden has officially made his decision. So we have a lot to break down, what his future is going to look like and the ramifications of this decision. And if you're a Philadelphia 76ers fan, grab a drink because this is going to be a long one. Before we get to the content, when we get to 100,000 subscribers that turn on my notifications, we're going to be giving away $1,000 between 5 subscribers that turn on our notifications on this channel. Now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. Can I be honest for a second? The one thing that changed sports for me forever is Prize Picks. Just having a little extra action on the game has made watching games so much more enjoyable, and I've actually been using this to get into other sports as well. A lot of you have DM'd me the amount of money that you guys are making off of Prize Picks, and I post my picks onto my Instagram story every single day. And right now, if you use my promo code microphone, they'll match your first deposit up to $100. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? A few days ago, the Philadelphia 76ers blew a 3-2 series lead versus the Boston Celtics and officially lost their season. Following it, it was very, very awkward, and you could tell from the interviews. From Joel Embiid saying him and James Harden needed help, despite them performing terribly in that pivotal Game 7.
You can't win alone. I can't win alone. Me and James, we just can't win alone. That's why basketball is played 5-on-5. So, we just need everybody to just, try to keep finding ways to get better, and, we'll be fine.
To Doc Rivers saying that he has tremendous job security.
Are you planning to be the coach of the team next year?
Yeah. I think I got 2 years left. So,
given the tenor of what you've seen happen in the last 2 or 3 days, where coaches of the year, guys with titles.
Yeah, no one's safe in our business, and I get that.
All the way to James Harden giving one of the strangest endorsements that I think I've ever seen for his existing coach.
How has your relationship been with Doc, and would you like to see him back?
Our relationship is okay.
At the time, there were some pretty big rumors persisting about James Harden's future. And when his ghost general manager, Daryl Morey, is technically doing everything behind the scenes, but Elton Brand is technically the Sixers general manager. When he was asked about James Harden's future, this is what he had to say.
Follow up with James obviously having the player option. Do you anticipate him being back here with the Sixers, being able to re-sign him?
James. We can't have those discussions yet, but we are interested in bringing him back.
Now, this is where things get really interesting, because originally in my head, I thought it was a foregone conclusion that James Harden would be back. He took a huge pay cut to try to win a championship with the Philadelphia 76ers this year. Most of that money went to Tobias Harris, and then, of course, there's Daniel House and PJ Tucker. But for the most part, you could say that it wasn't worth it. And James Harden was also a little bit upset that people weren't giving him more praise for taking a gigantic pay cut. I mean, the guy's only made $300 million in his career, and he left $14 million on the table for an opportunity to win a championship. So the fact that that busted clearly bothered him a little bit, because this morning on his Instagram story, James Harden would post this: experts really don't be experts. And this was a bit of a foreshadowing, because we found out what this would mean very, very soon. According to Chris B. Haynes, James Harden plans to decline a $35.6 million option to become a free agent and secure a long-term deal. For Chris B. Haynes, James Harden's interested in teams with a competitive roster and wants the basketball freedom him to be himself. So we heard in the past that James Harden's interested in signing with the Phoenix Suns. I have no idea how that would happen. I'm not taking that seriously at all whatsoever because, well, I don't know how that could happen. There are some serious players in this particular instance, but before we get to that, we need to discuss the fact that James Harden said that he wants to be with a competitive roster, and he currently is with an extremely competitive roster. I mean, Tyrese Maxey has one more year on his rookie scale contract. Tobias Harris is overpaid, but he's very solid, and if you could trade that contract, then I think the Philadelphia 76ers will be golden, and I think Daryl Morey's proven to us that he's more than capable of building a good roster around Harden. Joel Embiid is the reigning MVP. I think this team's a few defenders and a good head coach away from contention, and that's before we even get to the fact that the Sixers quite literally fired their head coach Doc Rivers, probably to appease James Harden, and still, that might look like it isn't enough, unless if James Harden is trying to sign a longer term contract with the Philadelphia 76ers. It doesn't look like it's shaping out to be that way. So what is James Harden's plan? Well, there are multiple theories that we could get into, and they both make sense if you think about it. The first one being the fact that he pretty much looked at what Chris Paul did on the Phoenix Suns and said,
I already took a huge pay cut for this team. I want a large contract extension. I deserve one.
Because James Harden's 33 and he could sign a 4-year deal with another team, which would be a 4-year max that would take him all the way to his age 37 season, which would probably be his last big payday unless if he pulls a Chris Paul. You know how Chris Paul got paid a ridiculous sum of money at the age of 36 with the Phoenix Suns? And that could be plan A. He might be a little salty at the fact that his pay cut didn't necessarily translate to a championship and the team fell short. The more fun theory is a theory that I've been shutting down since March, and it's starting to look more and more realistic. You see, yesterday, the Houston Rockets lost out on the chance to select Victor Wembanyama with the #1 overall pick. And clearly, the Rockets were upset, but Victor Wembanyama was not. Check it out.
Goes to the Houston Rockets.
Jabari Smith Jr. even subtweeted him as a result of this. But the Houston Rockets have stated multiple times that they are extremely interested in potentially bringing back James Harden. Why would James Harden go there? They literally had one of the worst records in the NBA, 22-60. Of course, Stephen Silas wasn't necessarily the greatest coach for this team. Their offense looked like the equivalent of an AAU basketball team this season. They do have young players in Jaylen Brown, Jabari Smith, Alperen Şengün, KJ Martin, and on top of that, they have assets for the future. I mean, if you remember, James Harden was originally traded to Brooklyn on January of 2021 in a trade that involved 4 teams, 3 first-round picks, 4 first-round pick swaps, and players. The crazy part about this is Tillman Fertitta, the owner of the Houston Rockets at the time, told James Harden that you're always welcome back here. This was despite things being pretty ugly between James Harden and the Houston Rockets. I don't know if you guys remember, but this was James Harden's attempt at forcing a trade out of Houston after throwing a basketball at Jayshawn Tate.
We're just not good enough. You know, we don't obviously chemistry, talent-wise, just everything. And it was clear, like I said, these last few games. I love this city. I literally, you know, have done everything that I can. You know, I mean, this situation is crazy. You know, it's something that I don't think can be fixed. So, yeah, thanks.
So what James Harden's attempting to pull off is pretty much what LeBron James did in 2009. If you guys don't remember, during LeBron James's final season, he stamped his feet on the floor and begged for a trade for Amari Stoudemire. He wanted some help in Cleveland, but the Cavaliers couldn't make it work. So in 2010, he took his talents to South Beach and joined the Miami Heat. The Cleveland Cavaliers stunk for 3 years, and by the time LeBron James wanted to return, they had a tremendous amount of assets and Kyrie Irving. They were able to package Anthony Bennett, Andrew Wiggins, and a bunch of other assets to get him Kevin Love, and the Cleveland Cavaliers were competitive once again. And it looks like James Harden is trying to do the same thing in a city that he's very, very comfortable with, and a team that would once again try to give him full reign over what he's trying to do. He's trying to become the player that he once was. I don't know how realistic that is considering the new NBA foul rules that came into play that hindered his game a little bit. But how would the Houston Rockets put a contender around James Harden? Well, Ime Udoka has ties to James Harden from their time in Brooklyn together. That's already established. And Ime Udoka has a tie to Jaylen Brown. Remember, when Ime Udoka was fired, Jaylen Brown refused to talk bad about him. He consistently said that there isn't enough information for him to comment on the situation in this interview.
Honestly, I think what I'm looking forward to most is just playing basketball, right? It's been a lot of talking and things like that. And tomorrow we just get to play basketball, we get to practice. So, I'm looking forward for that to start.
And he's quite fond of him. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say,
oh, automatically Jaylen Brown wants to join Ime Udoka
on the Houston Rockets while the Boston Celtics are in the Eastern Conference Finals. But the one thing I haven't brought up yet is the fact that both Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown made it to the All-NBA team. Great. Okay, they both get Supermaxes. It's not that simple. You see, the NBA really decided to shake things up with the brand new collective bargaining agreement. And what was once seen as a foregone conclusion to automatically give your players the Supermax once they could get the Supermax no longer seems to be the case because there's significant penalties for doing so. So Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are both eligible for huge contract extensions. I mean, Jaylen Brown could make $295 million over the next 5 years, and that deal would start in the 2024 to 2025 season, and it would be the largest contract in NBA history. And then Jason Tatum can agree to a 5-year contract for approximately $318 million the summer after, which will kick in for 2025 to 2026. In years prior, it was a foregone conclusion. If you had multiple players that can make max contracts, you do whatever it takes to retain those players, especially if they're homegrown talent like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But now, there's this brand new concept in the CBA that changes everything. So in the past, there has been the concept of an apron, which is a threshold of $6 million above the luxury tax, which increases along with the salary cap of around 10% each and every year. And that becomes the hard cap in some situations. So you can't really go over that. The example that is used here is when a team makes a sign and trade or uses a biannual exception. So in the past, if you were to exceed the luxury tax of $6 million, you would not be eligible to make sign and trades to exceed that threshold, according to my capology. Now, there's a brand new concept from the CBA. It's referred to as a double apron. At $17.5 million above the luxury tax line, there's way more penalties if you exceed this threshold. One, the taxpayer mid-level exception disappears, meaning you are no longer able to get yourself players like Malcolm Brogdon. So in this case, the Golden State Warriors would not be able to get Dante DiVincenzo, and the Denver Nuggets wouldn't be able to have Bruce Brown Jr. You also can't send out cash in trades to get second-round picks, and you can't trade first-round picks 7 years out, which is the way the Boston Celtics acquired Derek White from the Spurs last year. When you factor this with the comments that Jaylen Brown made, with the fact that Jaylen Brown has been mentioned in trade rumors for Kevin Durant when Kevin Durant was on the Brooklyn Nets, and it's usually the first trade piece that is floating up in the air whenever a potential blockbuster trade could be made for the Boston Celtics. When you consider the fact that the Celtics may be incentivized not to give both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum supermax contracts, you'd be witnessing the end of the Jaylen and Jason era for the Boston Celtics. Now, that wouldn't be the main reason Harden left. The main reason James Harden would leave would be to try to win a NBA championship. Now, a lot of this depends on how the Boston Celtics finish. I mean, they currently have the highest odds of winning the NBA Finals as it stands today, but assuming that they don't make it to the NBA Finals, assuming that they don't want to pay Jaylen Brown that super maximum contract in addition to Jason Tatum, assuming that they decide that, hey, it's probably best that we trade Jaylen Brown to a team that has a ton of assets, that has a lot of young players, that is willing to give up those young players, and just continue to build around Jason Tatum so we don't have to give Jaylen Brown this super max money, so we don't have to be as top heavy. But would Jaylen Brown and James Harden be enough to win a championship or even make it to the NBA Finals in the West? Well, yeah. Who else is going to be the top contender in the West? I mean, currently, the most dominant team in the Western Conference is the Denver Nuggets. LeBron James's future is looking kind of murky for the Los Angeles Lakers. I'll admit that myself. He said multiple times that he wants to play for whatever team that decides to draft his son, Bronny. For all you know, at this time next year, LeBron James might be playing his final basketball with the Los Angeles Lakers. The Golden State Warriors dynasty is going to look significantly different, and we definitely need to get you a video on that because Bob Myers might leave, Draymond Green might leave, Klay Thompson might leave. So the only main contenders I see in the Western Conference currently as it stands is the Denver Nuggets, the Memphis Grizzlies, and the Phoenix Suns. And we'll throw the Sacramento Kings in there for good measure because I feel like they deserve some respect after the season they had. With that being said, if you compare that to the Eastern Conference with teams like the Milwaukee Bucks, the Boston Celtics, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Philadelphia 76ers, who admittedly might be getting a little weaker, I will admit, and the Miami Heat, you can make a very legitimate argument that it could be easier to compete in the Western Conference than it is in the Eastern Conference in a year from now. So with all of those reasons considered, it makes a lot of sense as to why James Harden would leave the Philadelphia 76ers and try to go to the Houston Rockets. It's way more comfortable in Houston for him. They let him get away with anything he wanted to when he was a star there. There's no income tax. They could potentially put together a really good team around him. He loves the coach over there. He loves the owner over there. And the path to get to the NBA Finals might be slightly easier than the path it would be if he was in the East. So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this, man. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.